Hello everyone. I wanted to go ahead and make a quick video on a new series I'm going to be starting for the guild that's going to be running throughout the entire life of the guild called Future Proofing. I want everyone to know that this series is going to be specifically unscripted. It's going to be directly from my current thoughts on the guild and things that we need to work on for the future to make sure that we don't end up like the long list of guilds who have failed to reach their goals or unfortunately fell apart. This is going to start with some fundamental changes to the way that the guild is currently operating so that we're in a healthier state moving into the future. Those fundamental changes include a few things. First, diversification of the roles within the guild, more preparedness, integration of members, and more transparency. Let's dive into these a little bit more. First, diversification of roles. A lot of guilds have a huge problem where most of their operations revolve around one individual. Almost everything in the guild goes through that individual. And if they were to go on a vacation, or if they were to step back some or start to get burned out, then the entire guild feels a massive chain to them due to that player being gone or less involved. That's perfectly fine to some degree, but we won't have that to such an extreme where the guild could fall apart entirely when that person is gone. I feel that our guild in its current state is leaning towards that side. So, because of that, we're going to be diversifying the responsibilities throughout the guild so that things are more open. Another thing that comes with that diversification is I'm going to be much more forthright or more aggressive in explaining my thoughts behind the guild and the things that we need to do. Part one of this is you'll start to see Justin, aka Aldenhart, be more active inside of the guild with both things inside of Raid and outside of Raid. Following that, I'm going to look more aggressively for an analyst type position. Shortpots is somewhat filling that now, but either more aggressively upping his level of work or finding a different person to do so. After that, we'll start looking into other things, potentially an extra officer inside of the officer team to alleviate some of the pressure on the generalized team itself. Next, more preparedness. More preparedness simply means we need to be more ready for whenever we're going into raid. That includes multiple things. I'm noticing a lot of people coming to raid with gear that's just not upgraded, which doesn't make any sense since you could easily go out and get the crests. I'm also noticing quite a few people not having the correct enchants and gems that they need. And on top of that, I'm noticing multiple people who simply seem to have no clue what's going on inside of the fight. Season 4 is a little bit unique in how we've been approaching preparation, but we're going to go ahead and start making some adjustments to that, starting with Sarkareth tomorrow. You should know every inch of the fight before you even see it. That's because our guild is a 9-hour guild, and we're targeting top 100 world. That simply is not possible without coming to raid knowing everything you could know about the fight and then just trying to put that into action. Raid time is the time for you to put the things you already know into action, not the time to learn. You're learning how to enact the plan, you're not creating it. So make sure that you are personally doing what you need to do to be more prepared. I will also start releasing, after the diversification, more detailed information and boss guides on each individual boss and our specific strategy for it. We're also potentially for the War Within going to host multiple strategy meetings preceding the launch of Mythic. Next, integration of members. There are a couple members inside of the guild that are a little distant. I won't name any particulars, but multiple people who are just sitting almost on the sidelines and then come into raid and raid with us and then disappear again. That's okay, but it's not healthy for the future. because it can lead to miscommunications as well as misunderstandings of the thoughts behind things and the different causes of problems within the guild and with that particular player. This is where you get players leaving from question mark scenarios, or players leaving without talking first to me or an officer about their problems. We want to fix every single problem as they appear, and part of that is everyone being integrated with the main portion of the guild. What I mean by integration is you need to be active inside the guild. You don't need to simply just be sitting there and be like, oh, I'll do a key if somebody asks me to. You should be asking to do keys. You should be hopping in Discord and just hanging out while you're doing something else. You should be hopping in Discord and discussing raid things. You should be DMing your fellow healers, your fellow ranged DPS, your fellow warlocks, your fellow mages about the different things that you can work on to improve and kind of brainstorm together with them. Especially trials. Trials need to be active in integrating with the guild. The number one thing is that you integrate with the guild and get a sense of the team and understand the team. Make sure that you are pushing yourself to not just sit there and wait for people to invite you, but put yourself in front of them. Be in Discord, be in game, ask people directly, not just in the M+ channel, send a message there too, but ask people directly through DMs, through whispers, anything. Hey, let's run a key. Or just hang out in Discord while you're working on something. Just hang out in Discord at different times. Finally, transparency. The first step of this was the sheet, where I'm trying to give a more open view of what exactly is going on behind the scenes. I think that there's a little bit of room for some extra transparency with things relating to player performance, but also guild activities. You'll start seeing inside of the Slurp Squad news reports a section called Guild Activities, or Guild Inner Workings. That's going to be a new section which basically explains the thought process behind multiple different decisions inside of the guild. This is going to elongate the news reports, but I think it's very valuable so that there's no questions about what's happening. I want you to let us know if you believe that the thoughts that we're having are good, bad, or you think there's something that you have to add to that. And I want that to be posted, if possible, in a public channel, not simply just spewed about into DMs to where things get lost. I think valuable and open discussion is very, very important, whether you end up being incorrect because you didn't have all the facts, or whether you actually come up with a good thought or idea. I think both of those are very valuable to go ahead and discuss publicly, and I would push you to do that. Don't be afraid. We're all friends here, after all. At least we should be. Next, talking about the goals of being a top 100 world guild with a 9-hour schedule, we need to transition towards hyper-efficiency. This includes multiple things, but we're talking hyper-efficiency inside of Raid and outside of Raid. Remember what I said a minute ago is that Raid is all about putting the plan into action, not creating it. If you do not know the mechanics of the boss before you get to it, that is a problem. You should be watching POVs. You should be researching the boss mechanics before we get there. Obviously, I'll give a quick rundown and I will lead you through the phases as we get there, but if I say, for example, on Sarkareth, the moats, you should immediately know what I'm talking about and what that means for you. This is extremely important to becoming an efficient guild, and the number one thing that separates guilds that are sitting around the 900 world level to guilds that are sitting around the 300 world level. Hall of Fame guilds simply prepare better. They prepare more. The difference in preparation is the number one separator in world ranking. You should know everything in the fight. You may not be able to put it into action. That's what your 3 hours of raid are for. As far as the ideas of preparation and the expectations of it, we're going to shift this towards expecting you to know the fights before we get there. This includes strat meetings, which will be recorded and are optional to technically participate in, but highly encouraged. They're going to be on off raid nights, and I will post a VOD of the strat meeting as well as a TLDR at the very end for people to tune into in case that you really feel as though you don't need all of that information. Understand, however, If you were to skip those meetings and you were to only look at the TLDR inside of the strats, then if you underperform or have problems with mechanics, you will be much more aggressively reprimanded and benched. The other thing that goes along with that is changes to the raid attitude from leadership. What I mean is, I've noticed this guild, as much as I hate it, really does operate better with a little bit more aggressive and almost mean form of raid leading and problem solving, which leads directly into the aggressive problem solving change. This is something I'm open to not doing and something which I've avoided doing. I'm not going to be yelling at you, but I will very aggressively fix problems. I see them all the time, and they shouldn't be happening. And whenever I see that, I'm going to make sure that you know. And again, remember, you should not feel bad for messing up. I'm not trying to make you feel bad for messing up. Being more aggressive does not mean that I'm trying to dog on you. It does not mean that I'm trying to be mean. It does not mean that I'm trying to be in any way bullying. It simply means that I am trying to push you to quicker solve the problem and also be more aware of the problem, as well as help the other people who may not have known that the problem existed. For the future, this aggressive problem solving is going to more intensely involve both wording while we're inside of the fight and VOD reviewing directly afterwards. One thing that I believe will be a almost permanent thing now is I will have my stream open showing my Warcraft recorder during raid. This way you can just pop open my stream whenever we're in between pools, see what I'm looking at directly, and then I'll point out things which may end up being problems, or maybe there weren't anything that we needed to look at on that specific pool, and we can just move on. All of this is to create a fast-paced learning experience. You're getting into raid and you are trying to put the plan into action. Since you're not trying to create a plan, there's no need for all of this extra discussion and confusion on how certain mechanics work. There may be some talks on how to best handle a mechanic after we actually get in there and do it. The plan may need adjusting. That's perfectly fine. But we want very quickly you to be able to get, okay, first mechanic we're focusing on is the blazes. The blazes were clean. Nice. Okay, now we're focusing on the firestorms. The firestorms are done. Nice. Now we're moving on to the mythic soaks. The mythic soaks are done. Nice. Dream rends. Nice. Done. And we want to very quickly understand how to perform each of the plans that we've made for each individual mechanic. You need to be prepared enough to be able to put that into place, starting with Sarkareth tomorrow. Finally, I want a lot of feedback on these changes. I don't want anyone to feel like the guild became worse or the environment became worse or they were less happy with the guild after changes that we make. We're trying to iterate and become better progressively every single day. Message me or an officer directly if you have any problems, or you can make a feedback thread. You can make a public feedback thread where the entire guild can jump in after you make your post, or you can make one that just goes to the officers, or one that just goes to me. You are highly encouraged to let us know. If you call me an asshole and say that it's terrible, that's perfectly fine. That is valuable feedback, even if you're just cussing me out. I want to hear it. I'm not going to judge you in any way, shape, or form for giving me feedback other than appreciating you for doing it, even if it's extremely negative. I don't want a situation like we had with Nev, that he had problems with the way things were being run, but we had no idea. If he had simply just reached out to us, then we wouldn't have had a problem. Please reach out. Even if it's negative, you will not be criticized for it. You will in fact be praised for bringing it up, because we can't fix problems we don't know exist. The other way that you can give feedback if you're more disengaged, you can just simply respond to the poll that's posted near the end of every tier to give your thoughts and opinions on how the tier is going. This is not really enough, though, because don't let a problem that you're having just fester for 3 months during the middle of a tier. Bring it up, because we can likely fix it. We want to be able to fix problems, and the more problems that you bring up, the faster the guild gets better, and the faster we achieve our goals. That's really all I need to discuss right now. If you have any thoughts, I'm going to likely post another thread inside of Raid General. I know I've been going crazy with the threads recently, but I just don't want to pollute the server too much in the different channels, where you can directly respond to this. Just make sure you go and check and look at the Threads tab at the top right by clicking on Raid General and then clicking on Threads. I'll see all of you tonight for the webinar.